Hey Homestead, I'm Bobby.
And I'm Evelyn. Today we are here to have discussions with students on anti-racism at our school.
Our first guest is Noga Aloni. She is a 10th grader that is very passionate about social justice and advocacy.
Hey Noga, what does anti-racism mean to you?
To me, anti racism means not only um, trying to unlearn certain biases that we have ingrained in us because of the way that society is built, but also like dismantling oppressive systems in the country that um, even if someone personally isn't racist, um, certain structures that uphold like white supremacy in the United States would still be putting Black people and other minorities at a disadvantage. Um, so I think it's not only like personal development and growth, but also systematic change.
How has anti-racism been incorporated into your sophomore year experience so far?
I think anti racism has been incorporated into my sophomore year, um, not only based on how the school has been approaching it, but also I think that the students in the school are also becoming more aware of these issues. I think that this could either have to do with sophomore year or the fact that like the district is making changes to their curriculum or like the programs that they teach us. But I definitely think that what we're learning this year dives a little bit deeper into social justice and anti-racism, like with the modules that we did and certain things that we learned during advisory. And I think that also with like there is a pretty strong political climate, I guess, in the United States right now. So that means that a lot of students and teachers are becoming more aware of how they can help in the fight for equality and social justice and anti-racism. Um, so in general, I just think it's a topic that this year especially has a much stronger presence in our everyday conversations. So I would say that's the way that it's been incorporated most is just like the conversations that we're having with each other and the things that we're learning in school and outside of school.
How do you think the school can improve its anti-racism training?
So far, I think the school is doing a pretty good job with anti-racism training when it comes to learning about like the baseline issues that we see and like learning about experiences of people from different cultures. But I think that the place where it really can have the most effect isn't based on like an online module that we do in the beginning of the year as part of like an orientation thing. And it's not going to come from like watching a video. I think that the best way to include anti-racism into education in schools is making it a core part of the curriculum that we learn wherever it fits. And I know that's not always in the school's control because a lot of those things are like standards that the state sets in place. But classes where that information could be very relevant are like lit class and history class. I know there are others and certain electives, but I think that real change in the way that people approach anti-racism at school is going to come from class discussions and like implementing information about anti-racism into certain lessons wherever it's relevant. Because watching a video isn't gonna, like watching one video isn't gonna change someone's mind entirely. It takes a lot more than that, and it takes more in-depth education in order to really implement that shift in everyone's mindset. And in order to truly combat racism, I think it just needs to be implemented into everything we do, not necessarily just having a certain time of day to learn about anti-racism. Like, I think it needs to be something that's just like constantly being talked about because it's such an important issue, and I think it can apply to a lot of aspects of our lives.
Our next guest is Lotus Taylor.
So Lotus, we were wondering what anti-racism means to you.
I think anti-racism is not only yourself acting like not participating in racist acts, not saying racial slurs, but also not allowing others to do so either around you or in general, calling people out when they say something questionable or something that can't be offensive to people that are in your vicinity or even people you know, just overall really consistently standing up for overall equality, making sure that jokes are being made aren't at the, like, that somebody isn't the butt of that joke because of something they can't control, right?
Would you say that the advisory modules were successful in teaching you something new?
As far as the anti-racism ones, I personally had a hand in both making the video and also overseeing the module that we were given for all upcoming anti-racism ones that I believe will be shown on all sites. I'm going to be helping with those. We worked really hard. We worked really hard to make that video as not preachy as possible and went over every single word and tried to make it, you know, so that we could teach you guys something, but not like feel like, you know, because it gets lost in translation sometimes when it's something that's mandatory, something required by the district. Like there's all these big, I guess, stereotypes around it, for lack of a better word, but we really tried our best.
Do you believe that school has been your primary educational resource when it comes to race issues?
Well, in the context of what happened recently, right, with more of the BLM movement coming back into it and I received a lot of information from there. That's not to say I wasn't taught about the civil rights movement last year, my junior year, and that's not to say that I wasn't taught about a lot of the, you know, major discussions that happened my sophomore year, right, when we learned about, you know, the Congo and colonization and what happened in India and what happened to all these countries that, you know, and where the N-word kind of came from and where the stereotypes around African Americans kind of came from because of all this broken science. Like, it's not to say that I didn't learn about it, but I learned about it in a way that was disconnected from me. I learned about it in the sense of the past because a lot of those history classes were focused on, right, history. There was no real class other than maybe literature that genuinely focused on current events. Then in contrast with my senior year now, right, I'm taking U.S. government. Because this is an election year, we also take into consideration more of the real world, right? So a lot of the conversations we're going to be having are around current events. So I don't necessarily blame the school system for not having current conversations around race relations within the country being a part of their overall curriculum for the history units, because technically it wouldn't fit in because it's not about current events. But I do believe the school had some sort of responsibility to, you know, make a presentation or something. So I think I have learned about the history of it, but I don't think we've talked enough about how it applies to us today. I think we've been told to do it in assignments, but I don't think we've really talked about it. I don't think those conversations really happen in classrooms.
In your opinion, how do your friends affect your fight against anti-racism?
I have a good group of friends, right? And like, when we've had conversations around these things, some people do have different beliefs. And because of that, we choose not to have these conversations anymore. But the few of us who do agree, we still have conversations about it. And we still post about it, and our friends aren't shutting us down, right? That's another thing. Like, you shouldn't be shutting your friends down when they choose to believe in something, right? Or when they choose to show up for something. That's another really important thing. Honestly, like, segregation was still a thing, like, 70 years ago, man. Like, that's the difference, right? That's just all it is. It's like, this is still a very fresh wound, you know? Like, our grandfathers and grandmothers still were fully here for all that, right? It's like, that's why we're saying, hey, this is an issue. Because it's still deep, deep-seated, not just in the school systems, but in the neighborhoods we live in, but in parks, in all these different things that kind of hide what happened, right? We're trying to just take all the blankets off, man, and just show the real thing here. Like, they keep trying to put bandages and they're not stopping the bleeding. So it's like, hey, we need to take the bandages off and clean out the wound, man. We just got to clean out the wound at this point.
Would you like to add anything else?
VSU meets every other Thursday. Yeah, so follow our Instagram at Homestead VSU.